Welcome back to the Jess Berry Podcast. Today is going to be an amazing episode with Morgan Gutierrez. She's from Houston, Texas, and is the founder and head of growth for a real estate marketing and investment firm that focuses on saving people from foreclosure with more affordable housing and helping people achieve financial freedom through investing in commercial real estate. Morgan has completed a world-renowned mental discipline program, LIVEHARD, for 2 years and has embedded it into her lifestyle. When she's not working or working out, she cherishes time with her family and enjoys camping, dancing, and the great outdoors. So, welcome, Morgan.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, what stood out to me with Morgan, we actually just met a few weeks ago, and we were at a business networking event. And after the day was over, Morgan came up to me and she just asked if she could record me doing like a little quick interview. And it kind of threw me back for a second because I just feel like it was so forward. I feel like people are normally a little bit more reserved, or some people have a hard time just walking up and starting a conversation, but you're just out there like recording people and like getting people's testimonials and things like that. And I just thought that was really cool. Have you always been like that?
Maybe so. I think it's funny that you say that because you don't always notice things about yourself, right? So someone else recently told me, like, I don't know how you just walk up to people and strike up a conversation. And I was like, oh, that's not a thing other people do? Okay. So you take things for granted that you don't even realize is a gift, right? So a lot of people, it is awkward to walk up to somebody and strike up a conversation, much less say, hey, do you mind if I just record a quick clip with you? I come from a decently large family, and maybe that's why I'm the youngest of four. So maybe that's why I'm just like used to tagging along, figuring it out. Maybe I've always been that way and just never recognized it because I didn't know it was a gift or out of the norm.
Yeah, that's a cool perspective. A lot of times other people can see and recognize gifts that we have that are maybe just not as obvious to us. So it is great when we have people who are able to point those out. So that's definitely one of your gifts. You're very just like open and conversational with everybody. So that was awesome.
Yeah, what is a stranger?
Right? Wicked. I just watched that movie and I think Glenn is like a stranger is somebody that I just haven't met before or something.
Yeah.
So I liked that line. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Live Hard program. It seems like it's a really kind of challenging mental like discipline program. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will send you the podcast offline because everyone ever that asks me anything about it, I'm like, Andy says it the best, full credit to him. I'll send you the podcast, but I will definitely give you the rundown as well. It's
Cool.
changed my life. And I would strongly recommend for anyone that is struggling to get in shape or to run or start a business or just like, I feel like my life isn't going the way that I want and I don't know why. I can't seem to, this will fix it real quick for you. Because we are our biggest problems, our biggest enemies, and our biggest challenges, right? The only thing stopping us is us. And so once you kind of combat that, you really realize how much time you have in a day and how much you're really capable of. 75 Hard is the boot camp for Live Hard, and 75 Hard has 5 tasks in it. Have you heard of
I've heard
75?
of, yeah, I've heard of 75 hard, but okay, I see that.
So 75 Hard is the one that's like blown up the most, and people call it a challenge, which makes Andy a little upset because it's a program. It's not a challenge, right? It's like something that you do and then you need to incorporate it into your lifestyle because mental discipline is a skill that you have to hone over and over and over again. It's like saying I'm good at sales and then you stop selling, and if you try to go back to selling again, you're going to be a bit rusty, right? Same thing. These skills fatigue over time. So you always have to keep working on them. So 75 Hard is the boot camp, has 5 tasks. Drink a gallon of water every day. Take a progress picture every day. Read 10 pages of a book to make you better. Doesn't matter if it's like a business book, a parenting book, a marriage book, as long as it's something that's going to make you better, right? Something you're looking to improve in your life. Follow a specific diet, whatever diet you want. So you can choose the diet that you're trying to follow, but you follow that diet. And then your 5th one is that you do 2 workouts for 45 minutes. One of them has to be outside and they have to be at least 3 hours apart. And you do all of those for 75 days. And if you mess up even just a little bit, you start over at day 1.
Wow, definitely keeps you accountable to yourself.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you want me to dive more into it, Jess, but there's 3 phases after that for Live Hard. So I
Mhm.
can run my mouth all day. Tell
Yeah.
me what you want.
Yeah, I'd love to just hear that transition.
So after you finish 75 hard, you have 3 phases. Phase 1, it has everything that 75 hard has in it. And then there's 3 additional tasks. So you take a cold shower for 5 minutes. You
Mhm.
visualize. I can't remember if it's 10 or 15. It might be 10, but I do 15. So I don't know.
Okay.
Verify if you're gonna look, right? Like go verify the actual
Yeah.
podcast from Andy because I don't want to tell you wrong, but it's one of those 10 or 15 minutes. And then he has a power list, and that's a whole separate podcast that he has. But his power list is 5 things that you're doing to move your business or your life forward each day. So if you were already doing a power list of 5, then you add 3 to that power list. So 8 total for phase 1. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So phase 1 kicks my tail. I'm going to be honest with you. It's the only one that I super duper struggle with. And I really think it's those 3 extra tasks. Just they get me. They really make it an extra challenge for me, which is great. This year, I think I restarted phase 1 9 times. It's a month long. It's 30 days. And I started in May and I actually finally completed it in September.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. But hey, that's you learn what you messed up on every time and then you don't make that same mistake again. And then you have a 30-day break that is required in between phase 1 and phase 2. And the purpose behind that is like you've built this discipline at this point, but you've been in a program the whole time. So in between 75 hard and live hard, you can take a break or not. It's totally up to you. I usually take a break because I end 75 hard right around my anniversary. And then I pick up phase 1 whenever it's after my anniversary and we're done doing whatever we do for a celebration. But so you have this 30-day break in between phase 1 and phase 2 because the test is, did you really instill this into your lifestyle? Like when you're on a program, it's much easier to hold yourself accountable because you're on a program. And so you're not required to do anything for 30 days. You could do whatever you want. If you want to do the program, cool. If you don't want to do the program, cool. Right? That's kind of the idea behind it. So after this at least 30-day break, it can be longer, just can't be shorter. You have phase 2. And phase 2 is the exact same thing as 75 hard, except it's only 30 days. And so really it's just a test. Like you kicked your own tail in phase 1. How much of that, if any, did you keep as your lifestyle? And that dictates how hard phase 2 is for you.
Huh.
And then phase 3 ends on the date that you started 75 hard. And it's 30 days long. So for me, I started January 8th. And so my 30 days for phase 3 starts December 9th because that's 30 days, right?
Right.
And I have to go back and look at the list for this. So again, check the actual podcast for the right information. I want to make sure I'm not misspeaking, but it's same thing as 75 hard, same 5 tasks. And then there's 3 additional tasks, and those are you do a random act of kindness for somebody. You talk to a stranger, which may be one of the reasons I'm so good at talking to strangers because I've got lots of practice, yes. And then the third one is you take a cold shower for 5 minutes.
Okay.
And if you fail any of the other ones, 75 hard, phase 1 or phase 2, you just restart. If you fail phase 3, you fail the year because you can't restart, right? It has to end on the anniversary of your start date.
That's so interesting. Thank you for breaking that down because, yeah, like I've always heard 75 hard and I've been interested in it, but it's cool. Like there's more to it than just 5 days.
And a lot of people only ever do the 75 days. And look, I'm going to say if you did the 75 days, you're already better than most people if you continue that as your lifestyle. If you just 75 hard and then say, oh, the heck with this and don't ever do it again.
It's like, why are you doing it in the first place? Going into anything challenging, I think it's good to have that long-term mindset because I think sometimes we just challenge ourselves to have a challenge, but like once that challenge is over, then we're just right back to where we were if we're not continually implementing what we're learning throughout that challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
What's the biggest aspect of Live Hard that you have implemented in your personal and professional life?
Honestly, there's not a biggest aspect. I mean, the biggest aspect is mental discipline. But like, unless you've gone through it, you really don't understand. It's one of those types of things. If you weren't at Mega, you can't possibly understand the experience of Mega.
Mm-hmm.
Same
Yeah.
kind of concept, right?
Yeah, that's the event where Morgan and I met.
Thanks. I forget we're on a podcast with an audience that has no idea what's happening versus just having a conversation. So
I know, I do that too.
But I really became a different person in a lot of ways. I've probably always been relatively friendly and outspoken, if you will, and always very kind, but I have a lot less tolerance for people's excuses, is a nice way that I can say that. And I have a lot less tolerance for my own excuses too. And there are plenty of times that I think of people in my life who have really impacted it in one way or another from X, Y, and Z. And when I'm deciding, is this something I should be doing, or I don't want to do this thing and I know I need to do this thing, I'm like, okay, well, what would these people do? And the answer is always these people would have been like, they wouldn't have even thought about the fact that they didn't want to do it because they would have already been doing it. And I think that that's just such a key component in what you need if you really want to build the life you want. And most of us kind of want the same thing, right? We want to be able to do whatever we want with whoever we want, whenever we want. Yeah, the freedom of being able to choose what you do, who you do it with, and when you do it. And if you're ever actually going to build that for yourself, it takes mental discipline. And so this is the best way I've found to build mental discipline. Did not create it. Andy Frisella created it. He's wonderful. You should definitely check his podcast out for all the full information. I'll send it to you. You can put it in the link for this so that they have all the correct info. But it's not saying there's this one aspect aside from just the mental discipline to do it, because it just changes your entire life. It changes the way that you see yourself. It changes the way that you see other people. It changes the way that you see what you're doing. Because if you go through all of this, but you're not actually applying it, you're just doing the bare minimum to get by, are you really doing yourself any favors?
Yeah, I think how we do one thing is how we do everything. And so I can see how developing that mental discipline, like that's going to translate into every area of your life.
Yeah.
So working in real estate, particularly with individuals facing foreclosure, I bet that can be emotionally taxing at times. What are some of the challenges that you face doing that, and what helps you to stay focused and resilient in those hard times?
So I think one of the struggles for me is that my mindset is a lot different than the people that I'm working with. They're very often, not always, but often very stuck in the like, woe is me victim mentality. And I'm not like that at all. Like, I did all of this to myself. I choose to stay or go or do whatever, right? Even things that are out of my control, I still choose how I react to them. And so it's very challenging for me sometimes to step out of, you kind of did this to yourself, right? Like to step out of that, because that's not going to do anybody any favors. That's not going to get us anywhere except for they're going to be angry and hurt, and I'm not going to feel good about what I did. So getting out of that, and it's not always easy to do, especially if I'm running on very little sleep. I'm not as patient when I don't sleep enough. That's probably my biggest challenge in overcoming that. And then you had a second part to your question, and I rambled on so long that I don't remember what it was.
You're totally good. I was just wondering what has helped you through those difficult times.
I think that having a couple of ways to get out what you can't get out is helpful. Working out is a huge one of those for me. It's not rare that I'm like, today's lunch break will consist of a workout. Like, I'm going to get out all the things that I feel from my morning so I can carry myself into my afternoon. Fantastic.
Well, that's really good self-awareness and like intentionality, because I think even a lot of times when people recognize that they're feeling frustrated or full of emotion, they're like, oh, like I will take care of this later. And they just push it off and push it off. But you said, no, like I have this amount of time in the middle of my day, and I know if I work to express what I'm feeling in a healthy, positive, productive way, then I'll
Mhm.
be able to continue showing up for as my best self for the rest of the day.
And that's probably my biggest one that I've done. I actually started that when I was teaching. So if I had a really rough morning, I couldn't be who I needed to be for my kids in the afternoon. So during my very short teacher lunch break, I would crank out a quick little workout just to reset and get my mind back. So even if you don't have 45 minutes, which is like my typical workout minimum, even if you only have 15 minutes, sometimes a 15-minute sweat session to get your mind right is all that you need. So people think a lot of times a workout to clear your brain has to be a super long time. Not necessarily. You just need to get your blood pumping, physically work out what it is that you're feeling. And that's really helped me. Some of the shorter things I do, sometimes it's just like I schedule calls back to back to back. And sometimes somebody just has a very heartbreaking story or they're in a very, very hard spot, but they don't like any of the solutions I have. And it's like we're both just hitting a wall. And so you need to reset before you make the next call, right? You can't carry it with you. And so sometimes I just go stand outside in the sunshine. I set a timer for 2 minutes and I just close my eyes and I listen to the birds and I just stand in the sunshine. We recently got rid of our TV and put a fish tank there. My husband was like, the fish will help you be less stressed. You just watch fish and like they're so peaceful swimming around in their little fish tank. So I do. I stand in front of our fish tank and I'm like, hi guys.
That's awesome. I love all those grounding ideas, standing outside in the sun,
Yeah.
listening, like just connecting yourself with nature.
And
Um,
sometimes I do take my socks and shoes off and literally stand on the ground and ground myself.
that's so important, especially if you're working in a stressful environment or with people who are experiencing a lot of heavy emotions and things like you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then always pet your dogs, that always helps.
Yes. So I want to ask you a little bit about your faith and just how that has played a role in your life, whether professionally or personally. How do you see your faith showing up in your life?
Faith is like a large word that has a lot of meanings, right? So on one side, you have the whole religious, spiritual aspect of faith. And then on the other side, you just have like faith that something's going to happen, faith in X, Y, and Z, whatever it is, right? You just have this belief, if you will, in something. And I think that both of those are a correct definition of faith. And I've used both in my life. So I have a lot of faith that the stars are going to align, the puzzle pieces are going to come together, however you want to say it. The universe is going to provide, is how I often phrase it. And I just have a very strong belief in that, which I would call faith. So in pretty much my whole life, I choose to look at faith in that aspect. And it's not always easy, especially if you're going through something that's really challenging or that you never thought you would go through. You have the faith like it's going to work out, that there's a greater reason or purpose this is happening. And that typically aligns very nicely with my actual faith in I turn to prayer, I turn to meditation, I turn to Mother Nature and what connects us all and the higher power that I believe exists so that it can work through me and I can do what I need to do and be who I need to be for the people that I love. Not sure if that was specific enough.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the phrase turn to because I think that's a differentiating factor in your overall health and well-being. If you're going through a difficult time, what you turn to is going to determine your health and how you feel. Because if you turn to, like you were saying, nature, a higher power, prayer, grounding, things like that, you're going to walk away feeling more connected to yourself. But if you turn to scrolling on social media or just dwelling in negative thoughts, or any addiction or things like that, those things are going to disconnect you from yourself and they're going to hold you back when in reality, when you're going through a difficult time, you want to move forward through that difficult time. So I love that you have those different things that you already know, like I'm going to turn to this, or this when I'm going through a difficult time.
And it's not always the same one. Sometimes you need nature. Sometimes that's what you need. Like, you know it in your bones that you just need to disconnect from technology in this world that we live in where everything is instantaneous and everyone has access to you all the time from your phone and social media and what have you, right? I did that this year. I told the people that needed to know, hey, I'm escaping into the wilderness for the weekend. If there's an emergency, call my husband. Otherwise, I'm not answering. I won't even have my phone on me. There's no way to get in contact with me. I told my employees, like, you guys got this. Something starts burning down, there's a fire you don't know how to put out. Like, I fully trust that you got this. And we disappeared with our dogs and our tent into the wilderness. I did not know what time it was. There was no alarms. There was no technology. Like, that is what I needed. And I, yes, spent a lot of time praying and meditating and just enjoying nature. But sometimes you're like, okay, no, I need a physical escape into nature to ground myself and to reset. And then sometimes it's just like, I just need to go pray. So I grew up Catholic in the Adoration Chapel. I don't know if you're familiar, but the Adoration Chapel is super quiet. You're not allowed to talk at all. Someone always has to be there 24/7, and you can volunteer for slots. Well, especially when I was a teenager, my parents worked at the church. They were religious ed leaders, and our classes weren't always at the same time. So I spent a lot of time at the church, and there were times that I would go into the Adoration Chapel and just be there, just pray, just let whatever it was that God knew that I needed in that time come over me, come through me, come to me. Sometimes I just sit there in silence. There's specific songs that, depending on what's going on, that I may play that are, religious songs that hit a chord for me. And so I think that you kind of find these releases and these ways to reconnect and turn to your faith so that you get through whatever it is that, whether it's a rough day because there wasn't something you expected or a dying family member. Like, it can be on either extreme. It could be the most minimal thing ever or the thing that feels like it's ruining your life. But when you have a higher power to turn to and you have this belief and this faith that there is a reason, there's a purpose, and it may not make sense now, but it will, right? Then that just makes it all easier. You don't have to know all the answers. You just have to get through it.
I love that, not having to know all the answers. I think we get so hung up in the what and the why and the when and all of the wondering, but just like giving it to God or a higher power and focusing on what you can control, what you can learn from the situation, and the purpose of it being there in your life at that exact moment. And also, thank you for sharing a little bit more your growing up and your experience with the church. It sounds like that instilled a deep connection with prayer, just allowing yourself to be and to sit still and to be open. Do you feel like you are able to implement that on a day-to-day basis at work, or do you sometimes struggle with that?
There are definitely times where if I know I'm going to get on a difficult call, or if I just am talking to someone new, or maybe I just don't feel like I'm in the right headspace, you say, like, Lord, speak through me today. Give me the words that you know I need to say. Give me the way in which you know that I need to say them. Allow me to be who I need to be for this person today. So there are some short little prayers that I do like that. Religion and faith are not the same thing to me. Religion has a lot of rules around it. It's like, this is how you do it, this is what you do, and this is why you do it. And faith doesn't. Faith
has no rules.
And so I have a lot of faith, and I'm very faith-based, but that is not the same as religion for me. So while I take some of my religious upbringing and what I learned in church into my life and into my work now, I use my faith way more than I ever give my religion credit, if that makes sense.
100%. I know there's a lot of people out there just like you. I think it's cool, like, to be able to look back and just take away different parts of your religious upbringing and like implement what works for you now, like in today, and just allow life and experiences to work for you instead of against you. I grew up in a very religious community and setting, and I know a lot of people who have turned away from that religion and they carry resentment or bad feelings towards it. And in the end, just like with anything where you hold on to resentment, it's just like it's not doing you any good. It's not changing anything that you're feeling resentful about in the first place.
Like
So
drinking poison and hoping it affects someone else.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So looking back, trying to find gratitude as well for any experience that you've been given, positive or negative. Your perspective is what makes a difference. There's a really good quote that I like. Your perspective is your prison or your power.
That's
Yeah.
a good quote.
You also made me think about like how we can implement faith throughout the day more. You mentioned sometimes you'll have calls like back to back to back, and I was that same way. I was an HR recruiter for an accounting firm, and my scheduling was just way out of whack. I remember my boss coming in and looking at my schedule. He's like, how are you doing all of this?" Like, he's like, no, you need to space these out, have at least like a 5-10 minute buffer in between. And I just liked your idea, scheduling a little prayer break or something, like just being intentional with that time in between, whether it's like going outside or praying. Yeah, that can be super helpful.
And I mean, there's nothing like sending in some sunshine, arms wide open, just talking to the Lord. Ain't nothing better than that, honestly. I'm glad you mentioned gratitude too, Jess. Like gratitude is so powerful in our lives. And yes, for the good and for the bad, because even from the bad, you learn something. There is something good that comes out of it if you are willing to find it. And I call those blessings in disguise.
I like that. What is one thing that your younger self struggled with, but now you can look back and see it as a blessing in disguise?
That my younger self struggled with. You're making me go back into my brain. Hold on here for a second. You know what? Funny. Gratitude is something that my younger self struggled with. And I am so full of gratitude now for everything that I have, everything that I will have, and everything I've ever had. And I routinely apologize to my parents for being an ungrateful child. And they're like, "You weren't an ungrateful child." And I'm just like, I wasn't grateful enough. I didn't appreciate enough how hard it was for you to give us the life that we had. I didn't appreciate enough how wonderful it was to have 3 older siblings that I got to learn from, right? And so looking back now, I have immense gratitude for everything, because all of that has built me into who I am today. But I don't remember feeling that type of gratitude ever when I was younger. I don't know when that shift happened, but that would be what I would say.
I love that. Gratitude is so huge, so important in our day-to-day lives. And so I think it's a great reminder for Morgan to have a conversation with somebody that you admire or someone you want to express gratitude towards, whether it's for something in the past or something in your present life. Just expressing that gratitude and feeling that is super, super important and helpful. I wanted to thank Morgan again for coming on our podcast. I no, we didn't talk too much about what you do professionally, but Morgan's got a page on Instagram. I'm going to link that here so you guys can go check that out. And I did just want to mention with that, like how you're able to go away for the weekend to clear your mind. And you said you could just leave your team to put out the fires and fend for themselves.
You guys
But
got it.
I think that's a sign of a really good leader, like that you've trained them or created that space where you trust them and you're able to step away. So I want to give you props for that because I know that's probably wasn't easy.
No, it was not. But I needed to do it. And so, and it's funny because it's not easy to step away. Part of like being an entrepreneur is like we like to be in the nitty-gritty. We kind of like the grind. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't do all of this, right? And so sometimes that's the harder part of stepping out is that, and honestly, sometimes I feel guilty for it. Like I felt very guilty before I did it, that this is what I was going to do. But I also knew that is what I needed to do.
I think wisdom to be able to know when to hold on, when to let go, when to give things to God, when to, keep pushing forward with what you have.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you again, Morgan. I really appreciate you and your time and looking forward to staying connected and seeing how you keep developing in your personal and professional life.
Thanks for having me on. This was awesome.
You're welcome. All right, everybody, thank you for listening. And please share with anybody who you feel might benefit or who wants to check out the 75 Hard or Live Hard program. That sounded amazing. And also, if you want to connect further with Morgan, we're going to put her link down below.
And I'll send you the podcast for 75 Hard, so you can put that in the description too if they want it.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. All right. Thank you guys. Have an amazing day.